We all have moments in life where we're faced with a choice to keep going the same way we always have or to say yes to something new, something better. I'm Kat, and this is Say Yes with Kat, a podcast about exploring holistic health, mind, body, and soul. Together, we'll uncover the practices, stories, and insights that can help you live a more vibrant and empowered life, full color. Are you ready to say yes? Let's dive in. Hey friends, welcome to episode 8 of Say Yes with Kat. Today, we're getting personal. I've invited back Cynthia, psychologist and my partner, to help us unpack something that so many of us struggle with: how to set boundaries without feeling like a jerk or a villain or a selfish monster. Because we're unpacking so much in such a little bit of time, we've created a complimentary workbook to go along with this episode. Let's get started with why boundaries matter. Every day we wake up with a limited amount of energy: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. We have like a personal energy budget in all of those areas. And every time we say yes to something or someone, we're spending out of those accounts. And if we're not mindful, we end up running out. And when that happens, guess who shows back up? That's right, Cordy the stress zombie, straight in from episode 2. If you don't want that to happen, you have to remember that boundaries are how we stop that energy from leaking out. So today, we're going to focus especially on how those boundaries show up in our emotional and social wellness. These are 2 of the 8 pillars of holistic health, and they're deeply connected to how we manage our time, our energy, and our relationships. I said I was going to get personal, so I'm going to be real with you. For a long time, I did not understand all of this about boundaries. I thought I was fantastic at setting them, and I was in business. I stuck to firm deadlines. I was able to communicate clear expectations, no problem. But at home, with my family, I didn't even know I was supposed to have them. Somewhere along the way, I internalized this idea that when it comes to family, you just always say yes, no matter what it cost me. Then enter Cynthia, my original boundary cheerleader. Cynthia, I want to thank you for being here again. You were honestly the first person who helped me begin to change my narrative around what a boundary actually is. So thank you for that. And thank you for joining me and the listeners again today.
Thanks for having me back. I'm really excited that we're talking about boundaries today, and especially excited to put it in the context of the book Set Boundaries, Find Peace by Nedra Glover Tawwab. This book has been such a powerful guide for both of us, really, and also for so many of our friends and family members. I literally think this book can help everyone, so I recommend it a lot. And here's why I recommend this book. There's this misconception that boundaries push people away and that people are going to be really upset with you. But in reality, boundaries help us. They help us to value ourselves and to have healthy relationships. You cannot assume that people know what you need. And if you don't communicate it, you're the only one suffering. And anyone who truly cares about you wouldn't want you to suffer and should respect the boundaries that you set.
Well, I know I agree with that, but I also think this is really good motivation to help the listeners ask this question that I have for them. Is this talk about even setting boundaries making you uncomfortable? I know for me, initially, the idea of creating a boundary that could lead to anything other than a yes to something my family asked me to do immediately had me sensing this sort of like fear, and even guilt came up for me.
Yeah, I think the guilt associated with setting boundaries is totally normal. Guilt and fear are normal and expected parts of the boundary setting process. And in the book, she says that guilt is pretty much going to happen, but it's worth the outcome. The positive outcome from it is worth the temporary negative feelings. We can build things up in our minds so much that we create anxiety around it, but often a lot of that is just stressing ourselves out. The person hasn't even had an opportunity to respond yet. So it's important to find a way to motivate yourself through this discomfort. And if you have no idea how to do that, we're going to give you some things that you can try.
Let's start where most motivation starts: understanding your why. Why does this boundary matter? You are really going to have to sit down and reflect on this, because this why becomes your foundation of your motivation for being able to set and hold that particular boundary.
I think that can be considering, what feeling you're trying to change in the situation, what outcome you want. And I agree, it's really important to think about those things.
Yeah. It's also important to acknowledge that you're feeling this fear and you're feeling this guilt. And then you got to do the next part. You have to act anyways. People, we do this all the time, sometimes unhealthy ways, like I probably shouldn't eat this French fry, but I'm going to eat it anyways. I probably should put some sunscreen on, but I don't really have time, so I'm going to go out to the pool anyways. So we're already sort of doing things that we don't think we should be doing anyways. We also do it in healthy ways, right? I should take a nap. You probably have 10 million other things on your to-do list, but you recognize you're tired, you acknowledge your feeling, and you take a nap. Exercise. You realize you want a different tone to your body. You want more energy. So what do? You exercise. This is a muscle that we do all the time, and we can start doing it when this fear and this guilt is coming up when we're trying to set these boundaries.
I think another thing is to start small. It's not going to feel good to go out and try and make a huge change, at the beginning when you're first trying this out to set boundaries. So set a boundary that's a smaller boundary, a low stakes, something that you might want to change, but it's not the biggest deal to you, and the outcome isn't going to be too upsetting regardless of how it goes. So if you don't want to respond to text right away, maybe you start by just not responding for 5 minutes, and that's your boundary, that's your limit. Also, another thing you can do is visualize how you're going to feel after, which it probably will feel pretty good, right? It'll make you feel like you are valued. It'll make you feel more confident and respected, and it'll give you some peace. And you also have more time on your hands, for example, if you say no to something and you're not overextending yourself.
I also think a huge part of motivation is the whole phone a friend, right? When we have somebody who's willing to support our boundaries, not necessarily the person we're setting the boundary with, but someone that we trust to have conversations with, they can help you hold this boundary when you share your intention with them. They've got your back. Now it's time to start unpacking the framework that Cynthia and I use to help us do the actual work of setting these boundaries. So we started out using Nedra's book, Set Boundaries, Find Peace. Then we've sort of sprinkled in some of our own stuff based on life experience. Listeners, you can find the framework as well as a section to create your own impactful, authentic framework in the free workbook that we have included as a link in the episode description. You can say thank you by liking and subscribing to our channel. Now, let's dive into this framework. Cynthia, can you get us started?
Yeah, I want to talk about reframing guilt and fear. How can we think about this differently and give ourselves better messages? We're socialized to equate nice with always saying yes. So when we set and hold the line of our boundary, the guilt shows up and we don't feel good. We should think about changing this, reframing it, that a boundary doesn't mean we're unkind. It means that we're breaking old habits, and the guilt doesn't have to determine our behavior. With fear, we worry about how people are going to respond. We anticipate that they're going to respond in a negative way. And we need to reframe this as you're not responsible for other people's feelings. You're responsible for expressing your truth in a respectful way.
I also think it's helpful to give people a heads up, or even better, give them a copy of the book. When you're trying to set a boundary with someone that you already have a trusting relationship with, lean into that trust and let them know, hey, I've been reading this book. I've been learning about this framework around setting boundaries. And I really think a healthy way for us to deepen our relationship would be to learn how to set better boundaries with each other. So, hey, here's a gift. I got a book. I think we should read it together.
I think that's great because you can also reference that conversation when you are holding a boundary and say, I told you I'm working on this. This is what I'm doing. I'm trying to hold this boundary. Can you please respect that?
Exactly. Now, sometimes we don't have those types of relationships and we can't necessarily give someone a heads up, but what we can do is move into a place where we start to use more direct language when we're setting this boundary instead of justifying what we're doing. You do not have to over-explain yourself. When you justify something, you invite negotiation of your boundary. Here's an example. I can't do this because I have too much going on. I can't help, my back hurts. I can't go, I don't have money. How many of you listening to those reasons immediately came up with an argument about, you can wear a back brace and help me move this couch, no problem.
I'll pay for it.
Yeah,
Let's
I'll pay
go.
for it. You can still come along. You see what I'm saying? Justifying why you're setting a boundary invites negotiation. Think about being simple and clear. Just saying something like, I'm not able to take that on right now. That's it. There's no argument. It's simple, it's clear, it's done. For those of you who are still feeling like you need to give a reason, I am here to tell you your feelings are enough. I don't want to is a complete reason. We should not have to earn the right to rest or to have some peace or to just have some space. I'm telling you, I promise, your feelings are enough. Please do not keep explaining it.
And when you convey these feelings, it's about clarity, it's about respect. You want to say it in a respectful manner, not in a heated moment, and self-trust. You're not asking for approval. You don't need approval. So you can consider having an affirmation for yourself, such as, I'm allowed to make choices that support my well-being without explaining them to anyone, and remind yourself of this. And when you do state your boundary, you really want to be clear. You don't want to have any ambiguity. As Tawwab says in the book, people can't respect a boundary they don't understand.
I think this is a good time to introduce the concept of empowering phrases. Okay. This is a statement that says no with clarity and allows you to say yes to your well-being. I'm going to give you a few examples. That doesn't work for me right now. I don't have the capacity to commit to that. Thanks for thinking of me. I'm going to pass. Now, some of you might feel like these seem a little abrupt or maybe gasp, a little bit rude. So I'm going to tell you something else that you can use. It's called the boundary sandwich. All right. We're going to give them an affirmation. Then we're going to set our boundary. And then we're going to give them a care statement. So these can feel a little more comfortable. Here's an example of one. Thanks for thinking of me. You're affirming that they care about you. I need to sit this one out. You've now set your boundary. But hey, I hope it's a great event. You're showing them back that you care.
I like that. I think that's really helpful. Something that we haven't discussed yet, and that is covered extensively in the book, is consequences. So they're very important. What I mean is, what are you going to do if someone doesn't respect your boundary? There's got to be something that you clearly communicate, as clearly as you communicate the boundary itself, and you have to follow through on. The consequence gives strength to your boundary and motivates others to respect it and change their behavior.
We mentioned earlier that we recommend this book to a lot of our friends and family. We want to give you some of those real life scenarios and help kind of pull everything together, help you see this framework in action. So let's rewind back to how we're all socialized to think that nice means always saying yes. This person was the yes person in the office. Okay. They're always working 60 plus hours a week, overextending themselves, having to go out on leave because they're burning themselves out and just running around solving all of the problems. But they were creating problems for themselves. So I gave them the advice, hey, don't think of no as being unkind. I want you to think of no as breaking these old patterns, because the patterns are not leading to productivity or quality work. As soon as they were able to believe that and understand that being overextended was actually costing the team, and they started setting these boundaries to respect their capacity and their threshold, the quality of the work increased, the effectiveness of the team improved, and everyone else started modifying their behavior because of the boundary that this person was able to start setting for themselves.
Another example is a friend who set a boundary with a family member and didn't hold that boundary. So the family member constantly violated that boundary, and this eventually led to a heated argument. So my advice was that she should take a step back and reset, recommit to her boundary, and communicate it calmly and clearly. And that's really important to do it while things are calm, not when you're angry or really upset. And also to think about what consequences she was willing to commit to so that she could strengthen that boundary.
Okay, So let's say she gets her boundaries set. She feels like she said her piece. What is she going to do when she gets the pushback again?
Well, pushback's often a sign that you're doing the work. You're showing up differently, and people don't always adjust to different right away. Maybe they don't understand why you're changing what you usually do. But if they're uncomfortable with it, remember, you're not responsible for their discomfort. You're responsible for your peace. So you need to move forward and maintain that boundary.
What are some ways our listeners can do that?
I think one way you can do that is to hold the line kindly and clearly. It's not rude, it's reinforcement. So, for example, you could say, I understand that's disappointing, but I'm still not available. You can also use the broken record technique, which is just calmly repeating the same thing. You don't need a new excuse every time, as we already talked about, but you could say, I mentioned I won't be attending, and just repeat that as needed. Also, you can detach from their reaction. Again, you're not responsible for their feelings. This doesn't make you wrong. It means that they have their own work to do.
I like to lean into the thought of let life be their teacher.
Yeah, exactly.
So another thing that we can do to hold that when they're pushing back or we're expecting it is prepare for manipulation. People will guilt trip you. They might gaslight you. They could even break out some emotional blackmail. You can name it internally, really internalize and recognize what it is that they're doing and try not to engage. If that doesn't work, you might have to call them out, and it can help to have a buddy to help you hold the boundary in these circumstances. If that doesn't work, you can still use time and space as a boundary. When you have someone in your life who is consistently disrespecting your boundary, it's okay to reduce contact with them. And you can even let them know something like, hey, look, until we can communicate respectfully, I'm going to take some space. The last one to me is extremely important. Do not apologize for your boundary. Just don't. You can say it simply as, thank you for understanding my need to have some space. Speaking of space, we're going to wrap this up for you listeners and let you get back to your day. Before we do that, Cynthia, do you have any last thoughts you want to leave them with?
I just think there's so many areas of life where boundaries can be useful, and I hope everyone has been able to identify at least one area and one small step they can take to establish a boundary. And I encourage everyone to learn more about boundaries and apply them to improve your life.
Yeah. And remember, setting boundaries is a practice. You're not going to nail it every time. We definitely don't. Sometimes it feels awkward or even uncomfortable, especially if you're not used to advocating for your own needs. These boundaries are not about being perfect. They're just about being present. They're going to help you show up for your relationships and show up for yourself with more honesty, clarity, and care. And that's what emotional and social wellness is all about. So, listeners, I'm going to invite you to try to set one small boundary this week. Use the workbook that we've included. It has the resources we've mentioned. I'd also love to hear from you. Please share your thoughts on how you're going to state boundaries without feeling like a jerk on Facebook or TikTok, and let me know how you're going to make that small change this week. Before you leave, please share the wealth of health by liking and subscribing to our channel. And remember, this is your journey. It's all about taking these small, meaningful steps towards a healthier, happier you, full color. Until next time, say yes to your well-being and take care. The content of this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. Please consult a licensed healthcare provider before beginning any new health practice. Do not ignore or delay seeking medical advice because of something shared in this episode. If you're experiencing a medical emergency, call 911 or visit your nearest emergency room. Listening does not create a practitioner-client relationship. Yes to Holistic Health makes no guarantees regarding outcomes based on the information provided. Copyright notice, Yes to Holistic Health, all rights reserved. This content may be shared for non-profit educational purposes with credit to Yes to Holistic Health. No commercial use without written permission.